As I begin this second message for this service, I invite you once again to join me in prayer. Holy Spirit, we invite you now to dwell within us, to dwell in the time and the place where we can best encounter you in our lives, in our words, and in our silences. Amen. For this second reading from John, we have two storylines kind of running in parallel to one another. It's kind of like with a TV show where there's the A storyline that gets most of the attention, and then there's the B storyline that often has a different scale to the questions it's asking and to the scenes it sets, and that contrasts with the A storyline. And you can imagine, like, the A storyline is this courtroom drama where things get worse and worse for Jesus and escalate, almost like a court procedural or a legal procedural. And then the secondary B storyline is this inward, maybe psychological drama going on with Simon Peter, who's on the edge of all of the scenes. Like, he's on the edge of the courtyard, and then he comes in. And then he's at the edge of the fire, warming himself with the very police and guards who had arrested his master. And you can imagine the camera switches between, like, the court of Annas and then the flickering charcoal fire out in the courtyard. Both of these storylines are probably familiar to many of you watching this and listening. Jesus had to make his way through two whole courts, two whole legal systems, before they could come up with a way to put him to death. The temple wanted to put him to death for blasphemy, but you can't kill people for blasphemy in the Roman Empire, at least not blasphemy against the Jewish God. So he had to be put to death, very likely for sedition, for seeking to overthrow the Roman rulers in Jerusalem, which, to be fair, at the time, many Jews very much wanted to do. And interestingly, in convicting Jesus of sedition and putting him to death, they were in a way correct. But also, of course, in more important ways, they had it completely wrong. And as we watch these scenes play out, and you can continue with the reading, there is more courtroom drama to come as Jesus goes from Annas to Caiaphas and to Pontius Pilate. But as we follow along with this storyline, we can also think about the onlookers. People who were watching this unfold, people who hated Jesus, people who loved him and supported him, his terrified disciples hiding in the crowd, his family members wondering what was going to happen to him, thinking about how all these onlookers are responding. Are they happy about what's happening? Are they grieving? Are they angry? We can think about Caiaphas himself, the high priest of the temple of God, who had already told those in power that, you know what? In this case, it makes sense for just one man to die for the sake of the people. To save the Jewish people, one person has to die. Once again, like the sedition charge, in a way, he's exactly right. But of course, in every important way we can think of, he's wrong, and he doesn't understand what he's doing. He may never have understood the part he played in this whole drama, or what its important would be. I think of Peter in these scenes, kind of focusing on the B storyline. I think of Peter on the edge of things, on the edge of these scenes that we've read. And being on the edge of things could be a theme you could look at Peter's entire life as we know it through. We could look at Peter as being on the edge up to this point. Peter and his brothers are on the edge of leaving the family fishing business, so close to that edge that when Jesus offers him another chance, he jumps out of his boat and walks away from his inheritance. Peter was on the edge of leaping into the sea when he saw Jesus walk out over the waters. He was ready to go over the side. Peter was on the very edge of building a pilgrimage shrine at the peak of a mountaintop where he had seen Moses and Jesus and Elijah talking together, gleaming like lightning. In our very last reading, Peter was on the edge of rejecting foot washing entirely, and then he took the other way over the edge, demanding hand washing and head washing as well. In the Garden of Gethsemane, Peter was on the edge of joining a violent revolution. He had a sword ready. Who brings a sword to go pray in a garden? Peter did. And so when they come to arrest Jesus, Peter draws his sword. He's on the edge of a fight, and the edge of his sword slices off a slave's ear. And here he is, this night, on the edge of these proceedings, on the edge of the crowd, at the edge of the firelight, keeping his eyes open and his ears open and maybe his options open as well. The thing is, we cannot remain on the edge. The edge is sharp, and it divides, it cuts one from another. Peter was on the edge. Peter was divided. He was not meant to be divided forever. But as we follow along with this story, it's going to be some time before Peter is finally made whole. And it will also be some time for us before we too are made whole. But in the meantime, we cannot remain